All right, this episode of a Hero's Journey podcast is brought to you by SMP Inc., JPS Computers, and shout out to our listeners at Rock Rage Radio. My name is Brian Hopkins, and I'm sitting here with my co-host, Danielle Vasanova.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back.
And we are in part 2 right now of, I left out in that intro.
Rock Rage Radio, when? Monday night?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not worried about that. But yeah, Monday nights,
okay,
9 o'clock. But the last time we had Randy on, which he's still sitting here, the guy owns businesses. There's just so many facets of you. It's crazy. We could talk for hours, and I'm your friend. So it's fun for me to sit back and watch you ask him questions and put him in the hot seat. Like, you know,
he's a poet.
Yeah,
bring it on.
Exactly. So we got Randy Couture on a Hero's Journey podcast today, and Randy, welcome back.
Thanks, man.
It's like you never left the room.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's been a blast.
This has been a lot of fun. Last episode, you read a poem to us, Scars. We talked about how you got into fighting. We talked about movies, acting. You got into directing just recently. You directed a music video, was it?
I directed a music video for Chris Turner, who was a Marine that's now trying to make his way into country music, living in Nashville and doing his thing down there. And he's a great guy. I really enjoyed it. And he reached out to me. He's like, man, would really love it if you would be in my music video. And I said, well, if you'll let me direct it, I'll be happy to be in it.
Oh, dang.
Was that the first time
That's the first time I've stepped behind the camera in that way. So
wow.
I'm actually in the video and I've directed the video, which I had a lot of help. It was my first time kind of trying to tell the story. Certainly a story.
Did you have that in the back of your mind that you wanted to direct for a while?
I absolutely want to direct. When I read scripts, I get very clear pictures and see things vividly when I'm reading. I think that harkens back to wrestling and learning how to visualize. And, before I ever walked into a cage for a fight, I'd seen that fight hundreds of times before I ever walked out there on fight night. And so I think once you start exercising that kind of mental skill, those muscles, it becomes easier, much easier to visualize things and see things happen.
It's the power of the mind,
right?
right?
Absolutely. It's one of the things I think a lot of us miss. What do they say? 90% of athletics is mental, but we spend, if any, less than 10% of the time working on the mental skills to deal with athletics. And the thing I wished I'd have figured out sooner was that those same mental skills apply to your daily life and to anything else that you want to accomplish. You're going to want a raise at your job and you got to go talk to your boss about that. Visualize that occurrence. See it many, many times before you actually knock on his door and go in his office. Always with that one common denominator. You see yourself getting that raise. I see myself getting my hand raised every single time. And you will have a physical response to those pictures that you put in your head. And we can do exercise drill on that. I mean, picture a lemon. I do this all the time with my athletes. And if I had you close your eyes and visualize a lemon right now, and you see that lemon clearly, and you can see the skin and the nubs and the waxy yellow skin on this lemon. Now I want you to picture your hand coming in and slicing that lemon in half with a knife. And you see the two segments of that lemon separate. And you can see the pulp, and you can see the segments, and you can see the clear yellow juice spreading out on the counter, and you start to smell that lemon. Did your mouth start puckering, Brian?
Yeah.
You see any lemons in here?
No, exactly.
Yeah, you had a very physical response to that picture that you just put in your head.
Right.
That's how it works. And you can do that with anything. I may have saved myself a couple of divorces so that I'd learned that translated to my personal life a little sooner. But it absolutely does. It doesn't matter what it is. You can visualize yourself and visualize that success and going in there and accomplishing what you want to accomplish.
Okay. Sorry.
They say, how you do anything is how you do everything, right?
Yeah. I know in wrestling and fighting, you're going to compete exactly how you train. So if you're being lazy in the training environment and you're not being as sharp as you should be or as diligent as you should be, chances are that's probably how you're going to compete when you walk out there and it's on the line. So you have to be diligent at all times. You have to be a student of the game and really pay attention and try and get the most out of yourself.
What do you visualize next, like for the rest of your journey?
I like now, obviously, like I said, when I read scripts, I see very clear images of that story and seeing it happen and seeing
you
my
directing.
character there. And I think that certainly lends itself to the position that a director is going to be in. And I think at some point I want to direct. I thought I was going to get the chance to do that this summer. I did a movie early in the year called The Bellkeeper. It's kind of a supernatural thriller. It was a lot of fun.
Was that Mindy's? Or
No,
okay,
that was
sorry.
last year.
Okay.
The Dark Angels, the Demon
Yeah.
Pit. That's just been delivered now to
That was a
Paramount
feature,
Plus as a feature film.
Okay.
Minnie, my girlfriend, wrote it. I fell in love with the script. Obviously, made some
Producer,
connections
that's
and first time I've actually put some of my own skin in the game to get that film
Nice.
made. So we're excited about that. It's sold. We're getting our money back. They want us to write the second one. This is supposed to be a trilogy. So the first one is good enough, and they like it enough that they
We're
want us to write
actors.
the second.
We can act. Just saying.
Hey.
Could be something here.
So yeah, definitely excited
do you
about
write
that.
scripts as well?
I have not written a script, and I keep getting poked. You should write, because I write the other stuff,
Right.
and they're like, you should write a script, and I would like to do that. I feel like I'm running so hard that I don't have time to. First of all, finding the story that's going to tickle you enough to want to kind of write that out and then tell it.
Right.
But just slowing down long enough to be able to
You almost
do
had that series. I remember the knuckle boxing one.
Yeah,
but
FX. It was called Knockout, and Holt McCallan ended up getting that part, and he did a great job. And then I ended up doing a movie with him later.
Really?
He's a great guy. Really, really like him. And once you see him or see his name, he's one of those guys. You go, oh, that guy. Yeah, I remember him from. He just gets a lot of work, and rightly so. He's very good.
we cut you off. You had a thought of, you were talking about this other project that you thought you might.
Oh
be
yeah, I was.
directing.
I did the Bellkeeper, and Atisha is the producer of that, and she said, "Man, I have this veteran script that I'm trying to find a director for. Have you ever directed?" And I said, "Well, I did a music video, but that was it, and I've never really stepped in. You'd be taking a chance." But she said, "Yeah, but."
You're Randy Couture.
You've had lots of acting experience, so I think that would translate.
Yeah.
And I went through some of the producer meetings, via Zoom and talked to them, and was, I think, headed towards getting that acting job. And then I think the whole thing just kind of evaporated. It didn't happen. So we'll see. I'll get there sooner or later for sure.
Okay. Well, very cool. My thought process was getting lost here because there's so many different things that you do. You own a gym here in town, so I see these fighters that are coming up that, like, you're sitting here making me visualize, and I'm visualizing that. But Randy Couture, you keep that legacy alive. You have the Couture gym. What it's called?
Extreme Couture
yeah.
MMA. It's my second, actually my third gym, realistically. Dan Henderson, Matt Linlin, myself, and Robert Fallis founded Team Quest up in Oregon. That was my very first gym up in Gresham. Yeah. We all partnered up, and obviously Robert did the nuts and bolts parts of that. Me, Matt, and Danny were all fighting and out representing, and certainly a lot of fighters wanted to come in and train with us. So we had a great group of guys up there, literally the who's who in the sport at one time, for sure. You could have sold popcorn to a lot of those workouts. It was a great place to be. And then I obviously went through the divorce in Oregon, kind of moved to Vegas at that time, was originally training on the set for The Ultimate Fighter, which is what brought me to Vegas. I spent 90 days here shooting that first reality show, The Ultimate Fighter. And then it was in short, that next 6-8 months that I moved down here when that started airing in 2005.
Oh, wow.
So I was training on the set basically for the show, and I'm like, "Oh, you guys can't come in anymore. We're shooting another episode, another season." I'm like, I got to train.
Right.
So instead of going to every other gym in town, we got out, searched, and found a space and opened Extreme Couture here. I had opened Legends on Hawthorne in Beverly Hills, Hollywood, West Hollywood, and myself and Boss Rutan, and we had some partners in that, and it lasted a couple years, but it was a tough place there to run a gym. And so Boss and I both kind of divested in that. Boss went to Thousand Oaks, that area in the valley, and started his own gym there, and I was spending way more time in Vegas at that time, and opened Extreme Couture here, so it worked out.
I saw you playing yourself on Ballers. I sent you a video of it a couple of times. It's with The Rock.
Yeah. Yeah.
How was
Jay
that?
Glazer,
It's
Jay
real, right?
Glazer's,
Yeah.
Jay
It's
Glazer's
real.
one of my best friends. We started MMA athletics together, and he owns that gym up on Sunset Boulevard.
That's what made
behind
me
the Pink
think of it,
Taco.
yeah.
And they shoot a bunch of the episodes in there. And
Right.
Jay plays himself, and he kind of got me in there, training some of the guys on the show, basically playing myself as well.
Right.
It's fun, very fun show. A lot
Is
of
that
people love
weird?
that show.
By the way,
It's always
playing
weird playing yourself. Yes.
It's like Danielle when you sat here and said, doing a podcast, it's not like someone's giving me the lines and the things to do. You're not playing a character. We are just
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's a weird place to
It
be
is a
sometimes.
strange place
Yeah.
for sure.
It's easy to hide behind characters, right?
Well,
but when
and
you're
that's
being yourself,
the fun of acting.
Yeah.
Right?
But when you're being
Especially like
yourself-
playing the bad guys and stuff. You get to say and do stuff you would never do in real
Yeah.
life.
He scared the crap out of my mom in Hawaii 5-0. Hawaii 5-0.
Jason Duclair.
Yeah. He stands in the corner and just burns houses
I was
and
a
watches people
serial
die.
arsonist on that. I did 4 episodes of 5-0 before they shut it down, and he was fun. He was absolutely fun.
was your
I grew up
favorite-
in Seattle.
Okay.
And happened to be during that era when Ted Bundy was out prowling around and doing the things he did. And I actually had a junior high school teacher, Mrs. Minu, that dated him in college
Whoa.
and lived to tell about it. So
No way.
So I think everybody in Seattle, because that's where a lot of that went down, kind of knew that whole the court case and everything. And he was such a weird situation. Here's this very normal looking, almost charming, handsome guy.
They're
who's a
always
friggin'
normal and
serial
charming
killer, yeah.
looking, right?
So,
And then-
knowing what I knew about that, here's this Jason Duclair character they want me to play, who's trapping people and burning
But they
them
were looking-
alive.
It's kind of fun,
and
right?
so-
They were looking for handsome. Why'd they pick you?
I know, exactly, right?
I'm kidding. I love you. I'm just kidding. You are far away
See
on the
that
other
over there?
side.
I see how you are.
Are you wearing your cup, Brian?
No.
Cup check.
Cup check, cup check. Who was your favorite character that you've ever played?
Oh man, obviously I really like Toll Road, and we just finished Expendables 4, and so Toll Road continues to grow and see more of his character and how he fits in with this whole group of mercenaries. He's been a fun one. Jason Duclair was a fun one. I had a lot of people, including my mom, like, what was that? I'm gonna have nightmares.
My
about
mom
that.
too. Yep.
Because obviously, again, playing the bad guys like that, you get to say and do and be things that you would never be in real life, and that's the fun of it.
That's the fun of it. It seems like everything has sort of flowed for you, right? One thing led to the next, led to the next. Was there ever a time when things weren't flowing for you, or you
Plenty
didn't
of
feel
times.
He had 2 divorces.
Plenty
I'm kidding.
of times. 3 actually, but who's counting?
Like semantics?
Those are certainly those times where you really have to find some introspection and figure out what you're doing and why you're doing some of the things you're doing and sort some of that out. But
Why do you feel that you do what you do?
I just try to keep it simple, be myself. I never wanted to create a persona or be anybody else but this guy, and tried to keep it very, very simple. I just felt like it was a lot easier. I've seen, certainly in the fight world, in the professional world, these guys create these personas, and then the problem with that is, and then they have to live up to that everywhere they go, and a lot of them aren't really that guy. I mean, Chael Sonnen is a very, very good friend of mine. I've known him since he was in high school. We tried to recruit him to Oregon State. We ended up helping him get started in his Greco-Roman wrestling, international wrestling career, and helped him. I remember he got his first title shot, and he texted me. He's like, "Man, I'm going to make the most of this." And I'm thinking, of course you are. What a silly thing to text. And then I saw his first interview, and I was like, that was Chael? Because he was doing a lot of that, smack talking and just really stirring the pot. And unfortunately, at least in the UFC, that's kind of the prototype. They're rewarding that type of behavior. It's kind of the WWE model.
I was just going to
in a lot
say,
of
it's
ways.
WWE.
The guy who does the best publicity stunts and
Yep.
talks the most crap is the guy that's going to get the nod. I don't even know why
Throws
they
a-
have rankings.
Throws a bottle.
Yeah, or a
water,
hand truck through through the bus window.
Yep.
We know
Yep.
who that is.
Yep.
So unfortunately, that's kind of the behavior that's being rewarded with more fights. Whether you won or lost, he's going to bring you back, and I think that's the wrong message to send and takes away from what we stand for as mixed martial artists. But that's just my opinion.
So you are the new host of the PFL.
I am on the broadcast team.
Oh, yeah,
for the
that's what I
Professional
mean.
Fighters
Yeah.
League.
Yeah.
Our first 2 seasons were on NBCSN, And then we moved to ESPN as well. How they pulled that off with the UFC on ESPN also.
Wow.
But we're so different. What they did in the PFL is they took MMA and they put it in a true sports format. So we have a regular season, a playoff, and a championship every year, like every other sport you're used to. They're paying the fighters very, very well for each of their regular season fights, and then they're giving away $1 million in each weight class for the
On this
champion
tournament.
in each year.
It's like The Warrior, the
that
movie.
got a lot of guys'
Yeah.
attentions for sure. I mean, we've seen guys like Fabricio Verdum and Anthony Pettis and so many others that have transitioned over to the PFL now, and we're continuing to grow and really get some traction. We're just getting ready to launch PFL Europe. And there'll be PFL Global, which is where I'm working at right now on ESPN, and then I think eventually PFL Latin America and some of these feeder, farm team programs, basically to feed the global program for the big show and the $1 million purses. So it's been interesting getting traction. This is our 5th year, 4 seasons, but 5th year. We took 2020 off for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
There's no sense in kind of
Right.
doing it halfway. They spent so much time and money building this format. We would have never been able to pull that off with all the quarantines and the lockdowns and stuff.
Right.
And at first I was kind of angry with Dana trying to push that Fight Island thing and keep the sport on, all of us were a little freaked out when we're first seeing those videos from China and stuff. When the dust started settling, you start seeing what's really going on.
Right.
I was kind of happy he did that. And MMA was kind of the first sport back on the docket, even during the quarantines, because of his efforts there. So
Right.
I will give him credit for that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we know that that's awesome that you're saying that. So that's very cool.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Who are
that's-
some of your greatest inspirations?
My mom, she raised 3 of us as a single mom my entire life, and worked her butt off. Kept me in athletics from the time I was 5 to keep me off the streets and out of trouble, and just did a great job with us. She has an amazing work ethic. She's a very, very smart, resilient woman, and she set the bar. She set the example. She's the one that taught me how to work.
Love that.
From a hero's journey, like what we know and what we go through, the normal, what was the line that you crossed over? You had to step into a different world and take a chance. Was it military? Was it wrestling? What was it that you went, I am answering that call to action and stepping into adventure?
That was definitely fighting.
Right, yeah.
Like I said, I walked onto that wrestling mat at 12 years old, 7th grade in junior high, to hopefully get this dad's attention. That didn't work, but I learned a lot. I found a place, a vocation, I think, and vocare, the Latin word for vocation is a calling. That I just felt like this was what I was made to do.
That's
This
amazing.
was my calling. The head coach at Oregon State didn't like the fighting. He let me do it the first time. They asked me to be in that heavyweight tournament, UFC 13. That was April 1997. And he said, okay, but you got to get it past the athletic director. If he says it's all right, I'll allow it. And then, so I went to the athletic director, and he's like, oh man, that's the coolest thing ever. He thought it was great. Dutch was like, yeah, knock yourself out. Not literally.
Yeah.
Just,
Everybody calm down.
So I think Joe, or the head coach, was thinking he was going to shut me down, and I wouldn't do it. And I ended up doing it. And then they, of course, wanted me to fight again within 6 months. And that's, he's like, look, what are you going to be? You're going to be a coach, or are you going to be a fighter? And I'm like, well, coach, they're paying me more for this one fight than you pay me for the whole year. That's
Right.
the truth. It's going to allow me to train full time. I'm still pursuing those Olympic aspirations. I came up short in 92 and 96 as the #1 guy in my weight class. Still had not made that Olympic dream happen.
Wow.
And so now in 97, I can do this, train full time, try and make the 2000 team and achieve that goal. And it didn't work out that way. Heck, by that time I'd, 4 shows in anyway, 5 fights, 4 shows in, and I'm standing there with a world championship belt.
Oh my
I'm like,
gosh.
what the heck just happened?
Yeah, that's
Wow.
amazing.
So it was insane. And then, of course, the public and everything else came with that, and I knew my life had changed after UFC 13 and that tournament. Came back to Gresham.
Oregon boy.
Yeah, came back to
that's-
Gresham. Went to the
Oregon.
Costco. Some guy freaks out. Oh my God, Brandy Couture.
It was a guy, by the way.
And he runs to the front and buys a 9-pack of Instamatic cameras so he could yard one out, take a picture with me in the Costco. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? I realized in that moment that my life had just changed.
That's
and things
amazing.
were not going to be the same.
So you're Randy Couture to me. You're just Randy.
Thanks,
right?
I appreciate
You
that.
know, but I mean, you're saying that feeling, we all strive to be the best at what we do, right?
Yeah.
And you're sitting across from me, and it just trips me out that I'm sitting here asking you questions, 6-time world champion, all the things you do, including we cannot step over the fact that you help our military every day.
Well, that was a big decision for me. That was probably the first time I was scratching my head trying to figure out what I was really going to do. I'd been in the Army now for 6 years, 5.5 years when those 88 trials came around, and I ended up being an alternate on the 88 Olympic team as a soldier. And all these college coaches are like, who the hell is that kid? Where did he come from? He just beat the hell out of my guy. Where is he from? And then I realized I'm in the Army, so I didn't matriculate. My clock didn't start. I have 4 years of eligibility. So the phone starts ringing. And I got to make a decision. Am I going to keep my enlistment's about to be up? Am I going to keep doing what I'm doing? And I have 2 kids by this time. My daughter was born when I was stationed in Germany. Amy was born over there. Ryan was born just before I left for basic training. And it was a big difference. I always joke because Ryan cost me $2,500 and Amy cost me $25 in the Army because the Army was paying for everything.
Yeah.
But that was a big decision for me. Was I going to stay in the Army and keep doing what I was doing and chase that Olympic dream? And everything was pretty much covered. I mean, my family was good. You know, we traveled a lot, and I was gone a lot, training camps sometimes up to 6 or 8 months out of the year. I was away from my family. Again, those sacrifices you're willing to make to get where you want to be. So that was a big decision for me. Was I going to get out, take the scholarship, and get my college education, or was I going to keep doing what I've been doing for those 6 years? It was scary.
Yeah.
You know, I got a family to support. What if this thing doesn't work out? What
And
if
it's
I
new.
flunk?
It's
I hadn't been to school in
completely
6
different.
years.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, what am I going to do in college? So
Right.
My coach encouraged me, Coach Winters, like, hey, man, I'd love to keep you here. You've won a few titles for us in the Army, but I think the best thing for you and your family is for you to get out and go to Oklahoma State. It's the best wrestling school in the country. That's where you need to be. And so I said, well, that's what I'm going to do, Coach.
Wow.
So I ended up at Oklahoma State. And then obviously the second big decision where I was like, man, what am I going to do with this was whether or not I was going to quit my job and pursue the fighting, because obviously the head coach didn't like it. And that was a big risk. I mean, you don't know if you're going to be successful, how that's going to go, what's going to happen. Especially back then, the sport was really being scrutinized and politically a big backlash against it then.
And so new. It was so new.
Yeah.
The thing that we can't, before we wrap this up, we can't skip over is the Extreme Couture GI Foundation and how you've taken your celebrity and you've turned that into helping soldiers. We have one who's sitting here in the room right now, the hair standing up my arms, because you do this yourself. This is something that you have a team of people now that help you, but this was your idea.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to give back. The journey started in 06. Rich Franklin and I, through the UFC and my old unit, the 101st Airborne, got to go to Iraq. And I spent 12 days on the ground in a battle zone.
Right.
As a 19-year-old, I took that oath and wore that uniform and did all that training. There was nothing going on in the 80s. It was a peak of the Cold War. I never had to put it on the line. And now since 9/11, here's a lot of folks in harm's way, in combat zones, fighting a war on terror and all that stuff. And I'm there with these guys that are just like I was, just like I am to this day. I mean, that oath still sticks in me. It doesn't go away. And so the next year in 07, it was an amazing experience. I would say it was fun, but it wasn't fun. It was 125 degrees out. We live in Vegas.
Right.
You have not experienced this kind of heat. It's ridiculous. I thought it was in a microwave.
Yeah.
And then wearing, flak jacket and steel pot and all the other stuff you have to wear over there in 125 degrees. I mean, it was crazy. I was happy I was there. They were happy we were there. And actually, a couple of the FOBs had mats. We rolled them out and rolled with all those guys.
Really?
It was awesome. And they flew us around in Blackhawks, put us behind an M60 shooting out the back of Blackhawks. I mean, not at people.
Yeah, I know.
Out in the desert in the middle of nowhere. And I'm flying over this country thinking, this is the cradle of civilization? Are you kidding me? We are some tough SOBs. Jesus, this is a desolate, unbelievable place. So hugely, just made a huge mark on me being there. In '07, we did a barbecue for the Fisher House. The Fisher House is the Army's version of the Ronald McDonald House. All the soldiers that come into D.C. and are going through, that have been wounded, are going through the hospitals, getting fitted, learning to walk again, going through all their surgeries. The Fisher House takes care of their caregivers, their mom, their wife, their dad, that are down there, visiting them, getting them through that process. So meeting all of them, excuse me.
Yeah.
We got to walk the wards. We did a barbecue for the Fisher House, meeting all those caretakers, caregivers, and then getting to walk the wards and see all those guys fresh off the battlefield. Oh boy. And hearing the stories. Oh, my mom's car's in the parking garage. It's got a boot on it. It's $1,500 bill. We can't get the boot off. She needs her car. She's got to go home. You know, my dad has been here for 9 months with me. We've lost our house. He lost his job. I mean, just started stacking up guy after story after story after story. And that was the motivation for me after those two experiences to go file for 501c3 status and try and find a way to raise some funds and awareness about what these guys that have been wounded are going through. And that was the birth of the Extreme Couture GI Foundation in '08. We started our first deal, which was a motorcycle poker run.
Right.
It's been one of our staples. There's a very, very strong kinship between motorcycle riding and the one percenters, the guys that served. They came back from World War II, and that's the first thing they did with their money was bought a Harley and chopped it and did all that stuff.
You
That's
got
where
me a Harley. I wouldn't be
culture-
riding if it wasn't for you. You and Ben.
It's like, dude, you need to ride so you can come ride with us.
no.
It's basically how
I'm following in the truck all the time.
He's like, this sucks.
Can I come ride? I'll ride with you guys.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
for real.
So we just had our 14th annual, it's the biggest ride we've ever had in the 14 years we've been doing it. 537 bikes showed up.
I think I've done 8 with
It
you.
was incredible.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
And now we're in 5 cities. We're getting ready to be in our 5th city here.
Where?
Coconut Creek, Florida. Dave Mancuso, that's where he grew up.
Is that coming up?
And it's coming up November 5th.
Okay.
That weekend. It'll be the first time we've done it down there. We just did our 3rd in Quad Cities in Illinois. Mark Bam Pastelnik, one of the guys I wrestled with, had been coming to mind here and just loved what we were doing. He said, man, we need to do one of these up where I live. I said, well, take the bull by the horns, cowboy. Let's go.
Yeah.
He hates it when I call him a cowboy. He wrestled for UNI. They're Panthers.
Panther. Let's
That
go,
wrestling
Panther.
thing is, we just did our 2nd one up in the Pacific Northwest where I grew up.
Yeah.
With
I grew up
Pat.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. Pat organized that one up there. The
Amazing.
COVID, we're gonna keep doing them annually in these other places. So it's been really fun to see it grow. Really fun to see all the vets and all the people that come out to support it. And
what's great is you hand
delivered. Yeah, I go out
this
every
money.
year to Walter Reed and Bethesda. It's all kind of been combined now. There used to be 2 separate hospitals in DC, but they've kind of combined them into a new state-of-the-art facility. And I go out every year, and whatever money we raise that year, I sit down with families and hand out $10,000 checks to each of those families. So last year I got to sit down with 16 families and
That's
hand
amazing.
out $160,000.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yep.
We've expanded our mission through
beautiful.
MVP, Emerging Vets and Players, which I run the Nevada chapter. That's where we open up our gym to any retired athlete or soldier, and they can come work out. Every Friday, I've got 50 guys on that mat.
Yep.
And we spend the 30 minutes sweating and then 30 minutes huddling, sitting on the mat, talking. And nobody else allowed in there, no civilians. We speak a very particular language. And so it's a safe place for those guys to let those demons out, let the vent. Whether it's the VA or their wife or soon-to-be ex-wife or whatever's going on, that's a place they can let all that stuff out. That peer-on-peer counseling has been ridiculously powerful.
Applaud you, man.
Very.
And then
Absolutely.
that
That's
gave us a
Bravo.
better,
Yep.
bigger database for the vets in these cities. And we're in 8 cities now with MVP. We're getting ready to open in Phoenix here in October. So there, vetsinplayers.org is the name of that organization.
Okay.
If you're a vet, find one of our chapters. If you can't come in person, find one of our hybrids where you can Zoom in, work out with us, get in the huddle.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah. So what we had to pivot with COVID. The worst thing we could do with these guys is isolate them.
Yep.
So proud to say that in the 6 years we've been running MVP, we've had 1 suicide, which is against the statistics that are going on with our guys and gals.
What your
amazing.
song 22 is about. Yeah.
So we lose 22 a day, and I think that's a light number, honestly. But 22 a day to PTSD and suicide. So we're trying to turn that number back. It's never going to be 0, but 22 is ridiculous. So
They put 22 on my soccer uniform the other day.
I was
at
going to
this
say
game.
it was
That's
at
so
a-
weird. I didn't know that was.
Yeah, 2 is
the
my
meaning.
favorite number. That
Me
was my
too.
number in soccer.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
2's my favorite number
2.
too. That's
Yeah,
funny.
That is funny.
Wow.
What was it? Vetsandplayers.org?
Vetsandplayers.org. We call
Okay.
it MVP, Merging Vets
okay.
and Players. And that was founded by Glaze and Nate Boyer. Nate Boyer was a Green
Right.
Beret and played football at University of Texas, and then ended up coming to Jay to try and get a tryout with the Seahawks. We got him a tryout. He made the team
Wow.
at 33, almost 34 years old, playing in the NFL as a long snapper. And it was through those relationships that we recognized the commonality in transition issues with our veterans and professional athletes.
Love that.
And I've walked away from both of those uniforms. It doesn't really matter which it is. It's a big piece of who you are. I'm literally sitting next to Tony Gonzalez in a huddle. He's like, man, 2 years ago, I was Superman. I was the king of the world, the best player in the league. Now who am I?
Right?
Literally, I mean, if that doesn't slap you in the face.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
our
big
vets are
time.
the same. It's a huge piece of their identity and who they are. So
Yeah.
finding them a new purpose, helping them deal with the crap that they've seen and done, that
I'm
they were
involved in
trained to
another.
do.
I'm involved in
has
another
been-
organization called Heroes and Horses, and it deals with
Yes.
post-war vets
Yeah.
with PTSD and sort of their reintegration back into society by way of horses.
It's
And-
awesome. Yeah, I love that. And horses, most of them are smarter than most people I know. They're incredible animals. I have 4, and I love them dearly. And
Oh, wow.
they're amazing. Yeah.
yeah, I've ridden since I was about yay high. Yeah, beautiful.
I didn't start that till I was in my 30s.
Wow.
My father-in-law at the time drug me to a horse auction, and I was just there to watch, and I ended up coming home with a horse.
Oh, jeez.
What kind of horse do you
Hermiston,
have?
Oregon.
Wow.
What kind of horse?
It was a quarter horse.
Yeah.
Appendix quarter horse.
Yeah.
She was a barrel racing horse. I don't know what I was thinking. But she was gorgeous. Her name
no.
was Jessie. Fastest thing I've ever been on, for
Quarter
sure.
horses are great. They're
Oh my gosh.
fantastic.
But she turned
That
out
was
she
my
had
first horse.
She had a cataract on one eye. She was blind
Oh.
in one eye. Of course, I didn't know that when I bought her, but so she ran, but she would run like this, so her good
So she
eye
could
was in
see?
front. Oh, she was so fast too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What advice do you have to any little kids out there with big dreams?
I think find your passion. At the end of the day, it's about finding your passion in something. And once you find that passion, you're going to lock onto that, and you're going to make any of the sacrifices and adjustments that you need to get to or do to be the best at that. I think that's what it's about. I found a passion for wrestling, and that led me into fighting. Opened up a bunch of other doors for me, like getting a college degree and so many other things. But it all started with that passion. And I didn't know that's what it was going to be when I walked into that wrestling room, but that's how it worked out.
And now
so,
movies and directing and
Yeah, and that's something I never saw myself doing. I think I was in the 6th grade play. I played Tiny Tim. God bless us, everybody.
tiny.
That was it. That was it. I never went to drama. I never did any of that stuff in school. It wasn't something I ever saw myself doing. I've always been a theater goer. My mom used to take us to the Lynn Twin. Me and my 2 younger sisters, drop us off for the double feature because she could get 5 hours apiece.
Yeah.
and we're tied up at the movie theater. So I always loved the theater, but it
Me
wasn't
too.
something I ever saw myself doing. So
Yeah.
athletics opened that door. They called the UFC in early 2000s. They were doing a movie called Cradle to the Grave with DMX and Jet Li.
Yeah.
And they wanted authentic cage fighters for this underground cage fighting scene in that movie. So they called the UFC. The UFC called me, Chuck, and Tito. And I said, of course. I already was Taft-Hartley'd into a SAG card from a Nations Bank commercial I'd done going into the 96
how cool.
Olympics for Nations Bank. And so I didn't pay any dues, but I was Taft-Hartley'd in, so all I had to do was pay my dues, and I had
Right.
my card. So it was a cool experience. 7 days on a set, 14-hour days for that one little 5-minute scene
Yeah, yeah.
in that
That's it.
movie. It
That's
was
how it is.
crazy. Sitting around all day long for the next go and the next take. And man, it was really cool experience. I got bit by the bug that week and went out and started taking some acting classes and eventually found an agent. Such a catch-22. It's like, oh, you got to have a resume before you can get an agent, and you got
So that's
Yeah,
when
which-
we were
you can't
making
get a job unless you got an
Exactly.
I mean,
my resume had so many things on it that I didn't even know what that was. Like my acting teacher just put it together for me, and so I could start working.
Yeah.
I'm
That
like,
sounds good.
Yeah.
please don't ask me to say
Yeah.
anything or repeat any lines. Yeah,
That's funny.
that's crazy. So, well, before we wrap this up, Bud, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh man,
This-
Thank
thank
you.
you.
it meant a lot. This is a new journey for Danielle and I, and we're having a blast and sharing people's stories and trying to inspire and be inspired. Sitting here, I know you're my friend, but to hear deeper, versions of these stories just made the hair stand up in my arms, and it makes me want to go work harder.
Wow.
Because you're sitting over there and you do for others all the time. There are so many times you've stepped up for my family and was totally unexpected. And I thank you for it. And I'm telling the world, thank you. I love you, man. I appreciate you.
Love you too, brother. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah.
Man.
Thank you.
It's been my pleasure.
Everything. So
thank you so much. Do you have any
you,
final words of wisdom for anybody out there watching?
Man, I think just be yourself. Honestly, keep it simple. We as humans seem to want to complicate everything, and it's really not that complicated. The golden rule is the golden rule for a reason.
Yeah.
Treat people how you want to be treated.
That's
it's not
Exactly.
difficult. So, again,
Amen.
try to keep it simple and just live your life. Find your passion and pursue it with everything you have.
Well, thank you.
Thank you
Randy
so much.
Couture, Heroes Journey podcast, and those out there listening to on Rock Rage Radio, thank you. That's a champ sitting here across from us right now. 6-time world champ. Danielle, this has been a blast today.
Always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, hey, The Voice, Chase, thank you so much for doing such a great job today. And we want to thank each and every one of you out there. Go smash the subscribe button. Go hit it. Wherever you listen to, watch podcasts, please do that and share it with your friends. This is a Hero's Journey podcast with Brian Hopkins and Danielle Vasanova.
See you soon.
It's coming around to me.